Greetings, Earthling Reader friends. So today we are going to be reviewing, I got it right here, Diary by Chuck Palahniuk. So I actually enjoyed this book. I was not expecting to, because I read the premise, I watched a review of the book, and it just didn't seem interesting to me, and I was like, whatever. So I found it used, and I was like, whatever, let's just read it. And I actually ended up really enjoying it. I do have a couple critiques, but overall I really liked it. I thought it was very well written and very compelling. So I gave this book 3 stars. While it was written very well, I thought the ending was super confusing. Super confusing and kind of came out of nowhere. So instead of giving the book 4 stars, I gave the book 3 stars just for the last, like, I don't know, 100 pages maybe. So like the second half of the book. I thought it was really confusing and it kind of just came out of nowhere. Synopsis is Misty Wilmot, who is our narrator. She is an artist who could not complete art school because she was pregnant by Peter Wilmot, who is got a shady past and he does like weird body mutilation with pins and stuff. And he's an artist too, and he's flunked out of every art school, and she's attracted to him for some reason. I don't really know why. And so they start a relationship, and then eventually he brings her back to his hometown where they raise their daughter Tabby. And the book starts with him attempting suicide by sitting in his car in a closed garage, but the tank is only half full, so he goes into a coma. And that's where the book starts. Okay, so here are my critiques. So I thought the writing style was like a little all over the place. It's written in diary format. I mean, the book's called Diary, so that kind of makes sense. It gets confusing at some parts. It's because she'll repeat sentences. Sometimes she's not in her right mind because Misty's drinking like alcohol or she's taking pills or something, and it's like she'll go in and out of what's really happening, and then eventually like doctors give her pills that are laced with like lead and arsenic and stuff, and yeah, so the narration is pretty confusing. Like, she's an unreliable narrator to an extent, because sometimes she is in her right mind and she does narrate reliably. So yeah, so she's kind of unreliable to an extent. While I thought Misty was a well-developed character, well-written character, interesting in her ways or whatever, some of the characters in this book were comparable to cardboard. Some of them were just super boring and they didn't need to be there. And I felt like they didn't add something to the story. They were kind of just there for population effect. And they just didn't make sense to me, in my opinion. So I didn't like that part. But Misty was very well developed. She had a good character arc and character development throughout the story, especially towards the end, when we find out what's really happening and like the main part of the story. This is an interesting point because the book is scary. Okay, I would describe the book as scary, haunting, and eerie without gore. A lot of horror novels, they go for the shock factor, and they usually, if they can't scare you, they'll try to gross you out with horror novels. So this book, there's really only one gross scene, and that's towards the end, and it lasts for about a page. It's not even that gross. So it's a pretty tame book, gore-wise, which I thought was really interesting because there's a lot of horror novels, and I wouldn't say a majority, but a lot of them do have some level of gore within them. That again goes for the shock factor of reader. There is more than enough suspense to keep the story going. It's very well written that way. It's very compelling. The writing makes you want to keep reading, which is always a good quality in a book. And you want to know the layers, especially of the setting, because it's setting on this weird isolated island with all these people that have lived there for centuries, and it's just a very interesting premise. Once you get into the story, I mean, I didn't think it was interesting when I first heard of the book, but then once I started reading it, I was like, wow, you know, this is actually pretty cool. It's very mysterious, and it's very, it's very mysterious. I really like that the book had flashbacks. She writes flashbacks to like when she and Peter were in art school, before they moved to Wait and See Island, and she has flashbacks to her childhood, especially in the beginning, and so it's like you see where she came from. So it's not just setting on this island, it's like while they're in art school, and it explains the backstory of Peter, because Peter's not really in the story. He's in a coma for the entirety of the story except while in flashbacks. So Misty is the only really active character out of the two that is really doing the walking and talking, because Peter's in a coma. So to see the flashbacks, you get to see what made her the way she is now, like what made her tick for so long, and I thought that really pushed the story farther along, which was a good thing. And the flashbacks were equal with the timeline, so there wasn't really confusing or anything. And the flashbacks were written well enough that they weren't overpowering the rest of the plot. Another thing I liked about this book was that you learned a lot about artists and art in general, and there's a whole thing on creativity and where inspiration comes from, and the entire book is really about, the entire book is really about art, and and the tolls it can take on a person, and I think that it really gets that message across with the book, because often it's brought up how for example, the painting supplies could hurt people because they had lead in them, or that other art supplies could hurt people because of their ingredients, and they were saying, one of the quotes is how you can't, only real suffering brings true art, and I think that's like a main message in the book. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I'm not really an artist or anything, so I can't speak to that personally, but I thought that was an interesting concept to write about. A nice layer of tension that hangs over the entirety of the novel. It is very suspenseful. I have to give Chuck Palahniuk his props, because all of his novels are really suspenseful and really good that way, and you want to get to the end of them. You don't want to just stop reading. So this one was written especially well, in my opinion. So I thought that the tense air hanging over the book was really good and used well to further the story along. The story immediately grabs you, actually, because it's like you are immediately pushed into the story, and you want to see, it's like you need to see the end, or else half the book doesn't make sense. So it's like you want to read more and more and more, and it's like you're peeling back the layers of this book. Like you're peeling back the layers of the island, and why did they want her to paint, and the people of the island, and why is it so important that she paints and stuff. And there's a lot of secrets that unravel in the book, and I thought that was really cool. And I thought it made the book even better. Finally, I did not understand the ending that much. I mean, I understood the ending in a sense, but I didn't really get it. So I thought it kind of came out of nowhere, and it was a little rushed. I mean, it was a good ending, but it was a little rushed towards the end, and it was satisfying, but there definitely could have been more to it. Not like it was a cop-out or anything, but there definitely could have been more to the ending and its final revealing and stuff, so yeah. So that's my thought. My favorite quote is one from towards the end of the story. I think it was page 198. I don't know, I think it was page 198. And that was, "We all die," she says. "The goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to create something that will." And that really speaks to art, and I think that also speaks to the people on this island. So it really, you know, connects everything together in the circle of this plot, because the circle of this plot and everything that repeats and stuff and everything that means something to these people. So, would I recommend it? Yes, I would definitely recommend this book. It is scary without gore. And I take that back. It's not scary, it's creepy. And there is a difference between the two. Because, you know, creepy is like, yeah, I'm like looking over my shoulder, and then scary is like, oh my god. So, the book is creepy. It's not horrifying, it's not, you know, terrifying, but it is creepy. It doesn't lag at all. Like, Chuck Palahniuk did a great job with this, where there's no slow parts to this story, because everything means something to the ending. Like, everything is connected to the ending. So, yeah, so everything is relative, so there is no, like, place for small parts. For small, slow parts. I mean, everything is connected to the ending. Yes. So that's all my notes that I have for this book. If you have any questions, or if you disagree with me, if you agree with me, you can comment below, and I will try to respond back to you. As always, you can subscribe, or if you don't want to subscribe, that's okay too. I post frequently on this channel, book reviews, bookish related thingies. So yeah, so catch you later.